What's going on, poker fam? We are back with another video. In today's session, we are playing 2-5 at MGM, where we're buying in for $700, looking to run it up. If you're new to the channel, just want to say like, comment, and subscribe. I'm putting out videos every week, sometimes twice a week. Definitely a lot of action. I'm having fun doing this. I appreciate everyone who comes to me and says hello, even if it's just brief. I'll definitely take a second to do that. If anybody wants to play, I always leave my information to text me if you ever want to meet up and play. Just get with me. And without further ado, let's just get right into the action. Let's go. So in this very first hand, we have King Queen suited, and I decided to raise to $20 over a limp. When it gets to the button, he has other ideas, and he decides to raise it up to $75. And that $75, I guess, sounds good to the small blind because he decides to cold call. And now the original limper that thought his hand was good for just 5 now thinks it's good for 75. So I could be putting in a 4-bet, but I just got to the table and I don't know what people's 3-betting ranges are. Normally in these low stakes, it's pretty strong. So I don't want to run King Queen suited, which is going to flop pretty well a lot of times, into a range stronger than mine and then get jammed on and have to fold. So with all that being said, we're going 4 ways to a fly, which comes pretty excellent. It is Queen Queen 10 with 2 clubs. And so when it checks to me, I think about just checking to the aggressor, but he's on the button. And after I check, it's going to be a good chance that he could check. So with the flush draw being on the board, straight draws being on board, I decide to put out a bet of $150. So yes, I do dunk the flop, but I don't think it's that bad of a play. And I know it sounds like it's a large bet, but 4 people put in $75 pre, so the pot is $300. So I only made a half pot size bet. But this bet gets everybody to fold, and I take it down. Let me know what you think. Do you think I should have went for the check on the flop, or do you think that my dunk was appropriate? But either way, this is our first hand, and to scoop in that much money, $220 of profit first hand, I'll take it. So now we're moving on to the same hand, except for in spades. We have King Queen, and we are on the button, and there is a straddle. So there's one $10 call, and so when it gets to me, I'm going to put this up to about $50. That's almost standard, and that's the good thing about the straddle. It just gets more money in the pot. So being in position and the aggressor, the flop comes 10-7-3 with 2 spades. So when it gets to me, of course, I'm going to put out a bet with 2 overs and a flush draw, even a backdoor straight draw. So I go for the sizing of half pot, $75. There's plenty of 1 pair hands to get a hold of, maybe some weird draws. And $75 actually accomplish it as they both fold. So that's another $100 of profit we scoop in just like that. So let's keep the momentum going into the next hand, and hopefully we can ride smoothly. So moving to the next hand, we have a very pretty one. We have Queen 10 suited, 40% of a royal flush. And I'm under the gun. This is probably about as light as I'm going to open. And I open to $30. I get the button in the big blind to call. So we're going 3 ways to a flop, which comes Queen 7-3. With 2 clubs, and I definitely should be putting in a bet here, I believe, but as play I decide to check, maybe going for the check raise, and you can't check raise if nobody bets. So we're going off to the turn, which is a 6, and on this flop now at this point I know I got to put in some money, so I put out a bet of $30, and when I bet $30 I get raised by the button to $120, and at this point, I don't know none of the players, so to this aggression, I'm going to just fold. And when I fold, he teases me saying that he knew I didn't have shit because I checked the flop. And if I would have known at this time what I known as I got to the end of the session, there's no chance I would have folded. But as played, I didn't have nothing else to do, I didn't think. So I just fold and move on to see another hand. Now we're in the straddle, and when there's 2 limps, we decide to raise it up to $60. The original straddle decides to call, and so does the big blind. So we're going 3 ways to a flop, which is King 6-8 with 2 diamonds. Obviously a great flop for my range, maybe not particularly for my hand, seeing that there's an overcard, but I still could have the best hand a large majority of the time. I decide to put out a bet of $75, trying to get value from the draws and from maybe non-believing pairs, like maybe Ace-8, or a 6, 6, 7, something like that. And this does get the job done as they both call. The turn is now a 3. And I do want to play this a little cautiously because somebody could have a queen or have me beat in another way with a set possibly. So I decided to check, and the button player decides to bet out for 150. Now, this guy's been playing very tight. I've seen him just limping in with ace king waiting to hit, and then he wants to put money in the pot afterwards. So with all that being said, especially once the big blind player decides to call, I am out of there. And we do get to see a river. It is the 3 of diamonds. It does pair the board, but nonetheless, the button player decides to rip it all in, and the other player decides to fold. So obviously, this guy had a monster. I'm 100% convinced nines was not the best hand. So we lost a little bit in that hand, but we are moving along to make it right back. So this is a pretty interesting hand, even though it's all pre-flop action. So we have ace king in the +2 position. We raise it up to $20, and a player in late position decides to bump it up to 90. When he bumps up to 90, there's a player in the small blind who also decides to cold call. So when he cold calls, I'm not quite sure what he has. Maybe a hand like pocket nines, pocket tens, ace queen. I look at my stack, I only have about $750. So I just decided that, hey, maybe I should just rip this all in. That's the decision that I come to. Just want max forward equity or get somebody to commit their stack. I know the small blind's not that strong, so really it's just a matter of what does the cutoff have. And he does think about it for quite a long time, and then he decides to fold. So I know sometimes when you're facing a 3-bet, even with a hand like ace king, a lot of times in low stakes, we just want to call. But it's a really strong hand, and if you're playing at a table, especially that is 3-betting pretty light, then this is a slam dunk, no questions asked 4-bet. Maybe you could say that my sizing could have been a little bit of difference, but nonetheless, I either wanted max forward equity or for somebody to commit their stack if they had a hand like pocket queens or pocket jacks. And then we'll just go to the river, and whatever happens, it is what it is. So let me know if you would have played it different or you think I played it fine. But either way, that was good to scoop in. Close to $200, uncontested. So that's a win in my eyes. Let's go. As we all know, with all highlights comes low lights. So here we are on the button with ace-3 of clubs. Very beautiful hand, suited wheel cards. So we decide to bump it up to $40 on the button. And the big blind and the under the gun player, when it gets to them, they both are eyeing my stack, trying to see how much I have. And that's not really the most comfortable situation when you just have ace-3. But nonetheless, they just decide to call. So we're going 3 ways to a flop, which is king 6-7 with 2 clubs. So that's a beautiful flop. It hits my range. It hits my actual cards. We have the nut flush draw, overcard, and we have range advantage. So when they check to me, I decide to put out a bet of $55. The big blind thinks about it for just quite a minute and decides to fold. And the under the gun player, who's extremely sticky, decides to call. So when he calls, we see a turn, which is a 3, giving us a pair with the flush draw and the overcards and the range advantage and position advantage. And with all that being said, I decide to check when he checks to me. That is a huge mistake. When you increase equity that much, this is when I'm supposed to be laying down the hammer and betting close to pot. But I decided to get gun shy and I just checked. So we're off to a river, which is the jack of hearts. And when he checks, it gets to me. And the problem is, now that I'm thinking about it, this player was extremely sticky. But when he's just checking turn and checking river, that lets me know that he probably actually has a showdown value hand. And that's why he's just checking. Because I think if he just had air at this point in time, he would definitely try to bluff me off my hand. But at the time, I'm thinking, maybe my showdown value was good. And so when I check back, he shows me a 7. So he flops second pair and decided to call the flop one time because he did have some straight and backdoor draws. And I let him get there. If I lay down the hammer on the turn, there's no way he's continuing. Even the sticky as he is, I haven't shown myself to just be bluffing. So, of course, I know I would have gotten the fold. So, of course, this is me telling you that I played this hand extremely bad. You can tell me how I should have played it in the comments section or what sizing I should have chosen on the turn. But like I said, I'm trying to be as real as possible with y'all. So when I play good, I show you. And when I play like shit, I'm showing you as well. So let's try to move on to the next hand. You got to shake it off. As the low lights continues, we have ace jack of hearts under the gun, and we raise it up to $35. This gets the cutoff in the button to call. So we're going 3 ways. And the flop is king, queen, 9. At face value, this seems like it smashes my range, and to an extent it does, but at the same time, the nut advantage, I believe, goes to the field callers, seeing as that they're going to have more jack 10s than I am raising under the gun when they just call in position. So I decide to start off with a check, and the cutoff player, who's the sticky guy who just likes to fuck around, decides to bet for $45. And when the player on the button decides to call, I think that raising might be an overplay possibly. So I just decide to call, seeing as that I have an overcard and a gut shot to Broadway. So seeing as that's the case, we're going 3 ways to the turn, which is the 6 of clubs, which doesn't change the board at all. So now when I check, the cutoff slows down, he checks, and the button decides to check as well. I already decided I'm going to bluff close to any river we come to, but unfortunately it is a king. So it's kind of hard to bluff on paired boards. I feel like I'm getting called down by close to any queen. So when I check, the cutoff now decides to pick up the betting lead again and puts out a bet of $175. This puts the button in the blender, and I decide to use that time to think about what I'm going to do. After about a minute and a half, the button does decide to call. So when it gets back to me, everything in my soul is telling me to just rip it all in. I know the cutoff is fucking around, and I know the button just has a marginal hand at best, so probably just a queen. And everything that I can think of is saying, go all in, go all in. And I just get scared, and I don't pull the trigger, and I fold my hand. The cutoff insta-mugs his dust, and the button player shows that he just had a queen. And I am 1000% sure I could have got him off both of their hands if I just rip it all in for like $600 more. But unfortunately, me being shy ends up making me lose more money, and I don't know why I'm playing like this. I'm trying to shake it off. So let's see if we can do that. I'm close to being about even now for the session. So I'm going to shake this off, and let's try to win some money and get back into the profit zone. So quick little mid-session update. It was at this point in time when I was just really down on myself. Like, I just kept on the pussyfoot in, making like bad decisions, playing too passive. You know, I showed you 2 spots where I know that if I would have ripped it, I would have won. And I didn't pull the trigger when I knew it would have worked. And it's just like really upsetting. There was a few other like pre-flop spots where I didn't do what I was supposed to do. And I just was playing super like passive. And I don't really like the pussyfoot a lot, but that's what I was doing. I was just like, yo, stop playing like this. Stop playing like this. And I don't know. Every time I came to a decision, I just kept on choosing the passive route. So I really just had to look at myself and say, yo, you are not playing your A game. You are playing weak as hell. And, you know, at this point, I'm just like, all right, I definitely should just be leaving if I feel like I'm not playing my A game. But then I just say, hey, you know what? You got to tough through these times. At least I can recognize I'm not playing my A game, so maybe I can turn it around. So this is like a little mid-session update. We've all been there, but let's get back to the hands. Here we are in another spot with Ace King. We raised it up to $35 under the gun, and when it gets to middle position, he's a player that's been 3-betting relentlessly, so he decides to make it $115. That's a pretty good sizing there, but he's in position, and he's 3-betting so light at this point, I know it. And the player from the last hand that I told you had dust decides to call the 115. So now I'm looking at my stack. I only have about $650 total. So you know what I'm going to do. I rip it all in. I don't care what they have. If they have something they want to call off with, then we will see them on the river. But when I rip it, they both quickly fold, and so we get to scoop in quite a large pot, about $230 of profit just like that. So now we're back in the profit zone. So let's run this up and get to $1,000. Maybe an orbit later, we have pocket fives and decide to call in another gun raise to $35. And luckily, the relentless 3-betters both decide to relinquish their cards, and only the small blind decides to join us into the pot. So going 3 ways, it is 10-7-5. We have bottom set on a flush draw board. The small blind decides to check, which is standard, and now the original raiser decides to down bet to $30. And I should have took a better note of this, but the small blind player was already cutting out the $30 in his hand. I seen it, but didn't think nothing of it. So with that being said, I should have raised even more because it seemed like he has some interest into the pot. This player could have a hand as strong as jacks here. I've seen it, trust me. Or he could have a flush draw, of course. So I only raised it up to $100, and he decides to call. The original raiser folds, so now we're just going heads up with the small blind, and the turn is an innocent 3. And with that being said, I want to put max pressure on all of his hands, all of his combo draws. And if he has pocket jacks, he'll never fold, I don't think. So I rip it all in, and unfortunately, he beats me into the pot. So I'm pretty sure that I'm beat knowing that he's that tight, but I'm thinking I'm beat by the way of pocket 10s for top set or middle set with pocket 7s. And we see an ace of club on the river, which probably means nothing. And he shows that he has 4-6 of clubs. So he called my raise just open-ended, no flush draw, just open-ended. And he got there on the turn, innocent card, and I rip it all in, and he snap calls me, and that is it for my stack. And because I've been playing so poorly, I just decide to get up out of there. I have some more thoughts that I'm going to explain in the outro. So if you stick around for that, you're going to see a lot about how I'm feeling at this situation, because getting stacked is never fun, but there's a lot of insightful things that I did learn from this. Well, as you see, it didn't go too well after that. And I was pretty mad at myself, actually extremely mad at myself. But like I just said before, the poker guys was punishing me, I felt like. So I think that I deserved the loss because I kept on not being aggressive in spots when I knew I was supposed to. And then when I even played the pocket 5s. I could have 3-bet that hand too to kind of draw out the players behind me, which I probably should have did, because if you know you have players behind you that are going to 3-bet a lot, you need to be the one to 3-bet so they don't squeeze you out of the pot. So unfortunately, I didn't do that. And then, of course, when I hit a set, now I want to start being aggressive when I have a made hand. So that's not the way you win poker in the long run. You got to be aggressive with your draws, with your marginal hands. So I feel like the poker guys was just saying like, yeah, you want to play big and bad when you have a monster hand. So here, we're going to give you a nice soul cooler. So although I was mad about the situation, I was happy that I came to the realization that like, yo, I will never play that passive again. I will turn on the heat no matter what, because aggressive poker is what I'm normally used to playing. And I need to just get back to that to increase my win rate. So we were into the game for $700. We were out of the game for zero, nada. Well, actually, I had like 3 or 4 white chips that they gave me as like a consolation. So I had gas money to get home. But nonetheless, obviously not a good situation. But I promise in the next video, I will be more aggressive. I will be back to playing top-notch poker. And I promise we will get into a lot more interesting spots where I'm going to be the aggressor and I'm going to be the one putting pain on other people. So appreciate y'all watching. If you got to this point, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I'm always going to be real with y'all about my thoughts. This one kind of hurt the most. So until the next video, holla.